happens inside the actor's studio meets Gil Noble's Like It Is. And those are the inspirations for having an intimate, literary, tiny desk-ish experience with authors, activists, disruptors, culture shakers and movers that are doing things to inspire not just innovation, but opportunities to create community and disrupt deficit narratives. And so this evening, we are so excited to have Mr. Stanley Litow with us, author, or co-author of Breaking Barriers, which is a highlight of the PTECH model, and with us also the founding principal of the PTECH model that is being replicated nationally and internationally, Mr. Rashid F. Davis. So please give a warm round of applause. And I can't say enough, because anyone from the city knows coming north of Woodbury feels like Canada, right? And so the fact that they made the trek today to be here in this cozy bookseum, not only does it mean the world to us for what we know and love about the model, but it just speaks to how passionate and committed they are to not just spreading the word about PTECH, but showing up for PTECH family. And so we are very thankful that you're here with us today. And so I want to start by asking a few questions that are a little selfish. They are routine to this behind the bookstore experience. I'm putting myself in a very challenging position to do 2 interviews essentially in one within 25 minutes. So bear with me as I navigate facilitating this. But the first one is, growing up, did you have a bookstore in your neighborhood? And if so, what do you recall about it?
I don't recall a bookstore, I just recall the public library.
Okay, and what do you recall about that?
And I recall about the public library that I could go there and find what I wanted, and I could just be reading in about 15 minutes.
In 15 minutes.
And I love, and it's still there, on Tompkins Square Park, the New York Public Library, and they were so good to 4-year-olds. I loved it.
Beautiful. And so shout out to Tompkins Park. Do we have any city folk in the name?
Yep.
All right, so shout out to city folk. I know we're in Hudson Valley, so it's supposed to be New York love, but honoring that we have people from 845 and 347 and 718 in the building. How about you, Mr. Davis?
So I grew up between the Bronx, High Bridge section of the Bronx, where there was a bookstore, I don't remember the name, but in a public library in the South Carolina.
Okay, and what do you have in terms of a memory of being in those spaces?
I remember the alternative ways of learning to count, specifically from the Bronx. And breathe.
And breathe. Okay. And so what I love about not only both of their comments but this question is, one of the things we pride ourselves on in this space is really tapping into the traditional implicit memories that we love about a bookstore or a library, but also putting a twist, which we call a Sadie style swag, on the experience to make it non-traditional. And that's a perfect segue to talking about this book, Breaking Barriers, which is really spotlighting a non-traditional, extremely innovative, and successful, by way of data, which we know Mr. Davis is going to spit us with some numbers, about how private-public partnership in education can not only do things to break generational curses, but disrupt deficit narratives and bring equity to, regardless of zip code, what can be an educational experience to catapult young people into the next era of and season of life. And so can you tell us what inspired Breaking Barriers?
Well, what inspired Breaking Barriers was I had the experience of starting the first PTECH school, partnering with my brother from another mother over here, Rashid. And the idea was to solve a critical problem in New York City, which is far too few students, especially students of color, could get a college degree and find a pathway from school to college into career. And the idea was to create a seamless grade 9 to 14 school, not sending kid out the door with a high school diploma and hope that they would enroll in college and complete, because the numbers demonstrated that that didn't happen, and that far too few students who enroll in a community college could complete, especially students of color, especially low-income students. So the idea of an integrated program where students would start in grade 9 and essentially be in college on day 1, to be able to get their college degree through a scope and sequence of courses, and begin taking their college courses concurrently with their high school courses. And it was clear in the first school, which opened in Brooklyn, that it was already successful halfway into year one. And most people in education think that you've got to wait 6 years for it to complete, then have an evaluation, and then decide whether or not you're gonna, move towards number 2. And I think we decided basically from day one was that just like in the private sector, if there's a company that's successful, it expands, it grows, it gets replicated. So why not take the same idea and apply that same kind of spirit of entrepreneurship? And as PTECH grew, with the help of people on the ground, principals like Rashid Davis, like Kevin Rothman, it was successful, and it was clear that it was going to spread into other geographies. And then the question for me at the end of my retirement from IBM was, write a book about it so that people could learn about it not only from the standpoint of a public policy book, but learn about it from the stories of individual students. Because the students at the PTECH school in Newburgh, and this is the graduation at SUNY Orange, featuring the students from the PTECH school in Newburgh on the cover, every one of those students is a story. And the students are stories in every PTECH school across the United States and around the world. And I wanted to be able to tell the story so that people could understand it and not stop at 300 or 500 schools. When Barack Obama featured PTECH in the State of the Union and visited the school and said that this was the coolest principal in America, he also said that every student in the United States should be given this opportunity. And I firmly believe that. And that's why I think that everybody in this room is an advocate for this program. So if there's any opportunity, whether it's helping a new principal or it's encouraging people to not stop at X number of schools or this opportunity for X number of students, it's our job until we die to be able to make this the model for all students. I think that President Obama was 100% right.
And not make it a model, make it the model. And so we're huge fans of what you're describing. And here at Sadie's, we love alliterations. We're actually honored that this program's happening during our noteworthy November, because this book on breaking barriers literally is a title that is the epitome of what this model is. So Mr. Davis, can you tell us what breaking barriers means for you? And without putting words in your mouth, one thing I remember distinctly and fondly as math teacher under his tutelage and leadership at the founding PTECH in Brooklyn, a faculty meeting where he said, this model is literally going to rely on your belief in young people. And if you don't believe that every child in this building, IEP, ENL, level 1 or 2 in reading and math can get this degree, well, how about this? Fake it in my presence. And I said, wow, this is a real one. And so I don't want to put words in your mouth on what breaking barriers means for you, but I would surmise and speculate you'll say belief, but please tell us what this title means to you.
Wow, breaking barriers, what does it mean? It means first admitting that there are barriers. Right. Because many times we don't call it out. You have to name it. And so breaking barriers is understanding that education, public education, the way that we know it, is institutionalized and not set up, and particularly for those who come from the lowest levels of poverty. Mm-hmm. And so breaking barriers means, first and foremost, you must own the limitations of the institution that you're doing the work in. And so you must understand that you're part of the problem and part of the solution. But if you don't understand the barriers, then you're only going to repeat history. Yeah. And so breaking barriers is about understanding history and understanding your place in trying to disrupt and change that history.
Well, you can follow Mr. Davis. I don't know your IG handle yet, but his handle says it all. He's the hashtag STEM Disruptor. And so from everything from how he leads the building to his programming, to his intentional staffing, to how he leans in for young people, breaking the barriers here in the flesh, it can be done. And it all starts with a belief. So for this question, because I'm literally trying to create a behind the bookstore 60-minute experience in 20, forgive me, because I like it to feel like a conversation, but this question I'm gonna read because when I think about your book and you saying that it's really just a compilation of storytelling with the narrative and context of the why PTECH matters. You specifically call out expectations across race and class as a component of your book. And I'm speculating, please tell me if I'm wrong, that even intentionally, that's the first chapter after why PTECH in this book, because it all starts with beliefs and expectations. And so one of the things you say, to quote you, is that low expectations damage the prospects for students on their journeys, educationally and professionally. And so when PTECH first opened and there were talks about there really being a skills gap, you challenged that and said, they said there was a lack of jobs gap. It really was about a skills gap. And so how do we create a school model? I believe, Mr. Davis, you still call it college, because it's high school and college in one. So when I think about PTECH and its pathway to career, setting the bar high to develop curiosity and a propensity to learn rather than just a hard skill. Can you talk about how PTECH meets the epitome of career readiness for young people?
Yeah, I think it meets the career readiness by incorporating into the education experience mentoring from people in the private sector, so that young people who may be first generation to go to college, hopefully, will have access to mentors who can guide them through the process, that they can be exposed to the workplace through structured workplace visits where they're not like going to a museum, but they're visiting the workplace, they're engaged with people who are working, and they can understand what workplace skills are and what you have to do differently. That they have opportunity for paid internships on the high school level, which weren't available to many students at the high school. Most employers will only hire interns in the summer who are college students, so that the work experience and the preparation for work was part of learning, work and learning integrated together. And that students, even though they may have been behind when they started in grade 9, and they may have had economic issues and family issues, they had the support networks to be able to succeed. And when we started the first school, one of the things that the leadership in the New York City Public Schools said is, don't you want to have an admissions screen to accept only those students who are high achievers? And we said no, because high achievers do achieve. And what we want to do is provide that achievement opportunity for all students. So the idea of the school from day one was no admissions screen. And we want it to be an open door, and that just because a student did not achieve well in grade 8 doesn't mean that they can't, if they're given the right support and the right opportunity. And one of the students that in the book, in a PTECH school in Longmont, Colorado, came to Colorado at age 9, not speaking a word of English, and was not doing that well in middle school. And he completed the 6-year program in 4 years, and Jose got a full scholarship to Harvard, and he's profiled in the book. He's getting his bachelor's degree this year, and the sky's the limit. And there was nothing about the students at the PTECH school in Newburgh, or in Brooklyn, or in Colorado, or anywhere on the planet. They can succeed if given the right kind of an opportunity. And I think far too many of the model schools or innovations are available for some but not for all. And this was to break that barrier.
And what I love about what you're saying is not just about beliefs, but what happens when you're intentional and strategic about the environment and the school model that you're creating. And so when I think about that story, and I also think about what I know Mr. Davis is waiting in the wings, because he's going to give us the data. I'm not even going to attempt to try to read it because he's lived it. And so you don't have to memorize it when you've lived it. But if you could speak to a little bit about what are some of your favorite data points that speak to its success. And I'm sure you'll probably call out the MDRC, which literally just put out research that points to specifically for Black males, if not for a model like PTECH. And I'll let you fill in the blank.
Mm-hmm. Well, I before we even get to the MDRC, I think one of the best data points was the mentors. Because the big piece is about industry being involved. We've always had early college or some aspect of college, but having industry in the space, not taking the students to industry, but having industry come to the space of the school. And so having the mentors in the space really set a sense of urgency for teachers, because that's who you really want to see disrupt the classroom differently. Teachers need to have access to those industry mentors. Teachers need to see them on project days. So that way the space that you're creating, that culture then becomes real. And so it's not about the students going away to industry and being by themselves, but the mentors being in the space. So the space then really becomes a lab space, an accelerator to be able to show that if you give students the opportunity, then they will perform better on any type of assessment. And so the early opportunity for PSAT, SAT lend itself to having graduates 3 years after 9th grade who were then also hired by IBM. So the MDRC report definitely only assesses with validity that everything that we fought for actually worked. And so now we know that we could go back to all of the naysayers and say, see, we told you. Because now research now has shown with 6 PTECs that have come behind PTECH Brooklyn that, you know, we can accelerate learning and students can earn a 2-year degree within 1 year after 12th grade. And that's incredible because in New York City, there really was no leadership beyond the school.
And even when I think about one of the cohort class graduating, the concept that they were graduating with their associates before they got the high school diploma, like blew my mind. The concept that first generation Americans were literally at 17, like I just got offered a job at IBM for X thousands of dollars. And I remember distinctly, not to put my business out there, but I had been a teacher for 5 years before I had even earned that bracket of income. And these young people are coming out of this model with that opportunity to have generational wealth by way of a belief system and leadership and private and partner collaboration. So,
you know, one story that is in the book is when the model was first coming together, the company, IBM, for all entry-level jobs required a bachelor's degree. The Human Resources Department required a bachelor's degree for every entry-level job. And what we wanted to do was to change that for 9 jobs where the entry level could be an associate's degree. And the HR people didn't want to do that because bachelors. But the CEO of the company, presented with the data and the evidence, decided that he would support us to be able to say that if a student got an associate's degree from the school in computer science or electromechanical engineering, and give us the workplace skills that you value in an entry-level employee, and we will embed them into the experience that students were getting so that, yes, you could hire this student with an associate's degree, because even though it wasn't a bachelor's degree, the student would be more work-ready than somebody just with a bachelor's degree. And in the first cohort of students who had their paid internships the summer between their junior and senior year in high school, their managers were asked, how would you rate the skill level of those students compared to others that you've hired before? And they rated the skill level of those students comparable to juniors in college. Now, why was that the case? It was because you had an intentional model that gave students the mentoring, the internship opportunity, the structured workplace visits, and those workplace skills were stressed in the academic program, writing skills, presentation skills. And students didn't just have a summer job, they were prepared for that internship before they went out. And it was reinforced by the principal, by the teachers, consistently. So it basically said, you know, you can break the barrier. If the barrier is we're only hiring people a bachelor's degree, how do you break that barrier? The PTECH model laid it out.
Yes, and I love that you're calling that out. Are you looking at these questions?
No.
No? Okay. Because one of my questions to you was gonna be, is there any story in particular that you like in this book or you wanna highlight for those who haven't read it? And so coupled with that, when I think about disrupting narratives, another distinct memory from the founding PTECH that speaks to the story you just gave about disrupting the idea of what prereqs for a job is, right? You don't need a bachelor's, it could be an associate's. The idea that the 90 student on Algebra 1 is the only one who could pursue an associate's or a STEM degree, right? And yes, SUNYs and CUNYs have their proficiency levels for performance on state regions, but sometimes 90 is just indicative of being a strong test taker, not being able to critically think or think creatively. And so these are all the nuanced ways that PTECH is breaking the traditional pathway to allow entry and access to upward mobility. And so you mentioned leadership, and you slapped that guy there on the right a few times, and you have a whole chapter dedicated to leadership, and it really being like the make or break component of this model's success. And you even call out conscientious leadership in acknowledging Mr. Rashid F. Davis. What can you share about his leadership style and vision that has contributed to this model being replicated nationally and internationally?
Well, I think if you visit the school and walk through the school, and I can't tell you how many people we've brought into that school, from President Obama to heads of state, the Prime Minister of Australia, college presidents, governors. They go into the classroom, they see the pictures of the students on the wall who are college ready. They understand when they go into the classroom how different it is. I remember taking the president of Johns Hopkins into the math class, algebra class, taught by the teacher in Brooklyn, and we walked into the hallway afterwards. He said, "I've never seen a math class like that. That was amazing. The kids were problem solving, they were working together." So they didn't change the curriculum. It wasn't a different curriculum, but the teacher communicated the importance of the skills that were critically important, and you could feel it in the classroom because it was different, and the students were problem solving, they were writing, they were doing things that you would expect in the workplace. And those stories really do explain why it's different, but also why it's not impossible to do. There isn't a barrier to starting PTECH schools in any state or in Australia or France or Hong Kong or wherever they are. There's nothing that prohibits, you expanding from this opportunity for some and for all.
Yes, and so to reciprocate the acknowledgement and the love, Mr. Davis, when you think about the private partner collaboration and what makes the partnership with IBM or an industry partnership in general, what has contributed to PTECH's success nationally and internationally by way of that private partner relationship?
It all goes back to the teacher, because the numbers look good, but it's really about the consistency of practice. And it's what I could show and what I could always consistently show and grow. How do the skills transfer? And then it's really about skills, but it's about really the dynamic of teachers, and it goes back to leadership. And so it really wasn't our success because Stan and I knew it was successful. We didn't have to be convinced. For me, always it was about what would happen in Newburgh, very first place outside of New York City, where the host principal actually had the opportunity to see you teach and see how skills actually work. And so I always said that Kevin was one of my heroes, because if he was able to make it work with a building principal, then the sky would be the limit. And also they were working with the State University of New York, whereas we were working with the City University of New York. So actually being able to see teachers come together and a leader with another leader and actually now take our idea and actually produce college graduates 3 years after 9th grade. That was really the data point for me. That was the ultimate, because it also was rooted in the principal coming into your classroom and understanding, the geogebra or the craziness of trying to really be intentional and strategic, but also allowing teachers to do what they did. And so Stan would say, I'm not the educator, business is not the educators, we gotta allow the educators do what they do. I would say, well, I'm not the teacher, I gotta allow the teachers do what they do and not micromanage. But how do I have ongoing conversations about points of data to be able to show that success actually was happening?
I love that you're calling out, like, allowing the people to do what they do, right? From the industry partner letting the school be the school leadership letting the teacher own the classroom and be the teacher. And as a former teacher in the founding PTECH school, I mean, one of the things that I leaned on heavy in my practice, from the Nicole Murrays to the Jades, was let the kids run the space. Because if youth culture is what dominates not only how they choose to prioritize things in life, why have them fight against what they naturally gravitate towards, leverage it in the classroom, and somehow connect whatever the youth are connected to and fit it into curriculum. And so shout out to the teachers of all the PTECH models that are doing their thing in their own autonomous way within the realms of Charlotte Danielson and your supervisors, of course, to help produce the young people that are breaking these barriers. And we even have some alum in the room, and so shout out to you and what you've done to be a part of the history of this school model. And I really wanted to call that out, because without your testimony, this experience is not as rich. So we love that you're here. And so another thing that I've experienced leaving the city outside of a supreme culture shock is going into districts where they'll say, oh, we have super courses. Oh, we offer AP. We don't need a PTECH, right? Because kids can get college credits just by being in our building. And so what might you say to a school district or a school leadership team that is either reluctant or hesitant to pursue another round of RFPs coming out next year for a PTECH grant?
Well, I would say that just having access to taking a college course is not a pathway from school to college to career. It just isn't. And I'm not saying anything negative about early college opportunities. It's fine to give a student an opportunity to take a course here or there and then go on there, but it doesn't connect to an actual degree. It doesn't. And just taking the college course doesn't provide that opportunity. And unfortunately, Education Trust did an evaluation of the early college programs around the country, and they said far too many of them screened for admission, and that the opportunity was, again, afforded to some but not to others. And I really do believe that the PTECH model that makes the degree and the pathway to the career are critically important. I had an opportunity in North Carolina to be the speaker at an early college conference. They had 600 people in the room at a hotel. And I got up and I said, just for me, how many employers are in the room? And not one hand went up, because it was just about taking a college course. And I think the PTECH program breaks down that barrier. It's not just exposure to a course, it's a pathway to a degree. And the degree is a pathway to a career. And that's what is different. And it doesn't mean that every student has to take that one pathway. We have people in this room who got their associate degree in computer science and then went on to get a bachelor's degree and do something different. There are students who have gotten their master's degree. There are students in this picture of this graduation who got their law degree. So it's not the end, it's the beginning. So yes, if a student gets their degree in biotech or cybersecurity or engineering, an associate degree, and they're offered a job and they can make 6 figures, and that's what they want, that's fine. But if the student wants something else, they can also get that. It's not your grandma's CTE. It's not just one career opportunity. It's you're in the driver's seat for career, and it's up to the student with the support network to be able to achieve whatever they want to achieve. And whether they went to a school in Brooklyn or Newburgh or anywhere, the data demonstrates that given the right opportunity, any student can achieve.
And so we have city officials in the room. Shout out to Mayor Harvey, who's also a PTECH history teacher in the room. We have Maria Bruni, a city official, also with the business and community development in the room. We have alumni, we have teachers, and I love the diversity, even in this intimate, cozy audience of presence. We have Mr. Sussman in the space, who we love, a prominent litigator, a Sadie's board member. We have community members who are part of Paris. And so no matter how you're leaning into this space, if you live in a community that doesn't have a PTECH, not a shameless plug for a book purchase, but really to expand the movement that is PTECH, grab this book, give it to a board member, speak about the importance of this model for changing outcomes, because the proof is not in the pudding, it's in these people that are in this room and sitting here in these chairs. And so Mr. Davis, same question for you. A district is reluctant, and they're like, we don't need a PTECH. What are you telling them?
I'm gonna say every ninth grader already comes to school with an idea of a career that's not rooted in graduating from high school or going to college. And so if you want to change the reality of the trajectories of students not needing social services and not having a system take care of them, it's important to understand that immediately at ninth grade, they could see college and they could see industry. Because also many of them are seeing, as I say, careers that have nothing to do with graduating from high school and going to college. And so it's important to understand that now more than ever. When we started PTECH, the majority of students in public education were not brown in the United States. That's no longer the reality. And we've shown that you can accelerate learning with 7 states during the pandemic producing PTECH college graduates. So for those who want to remain, and we should just be honest, because I'm 53, my hair is white, it was black when we started. I go and say, we knew one of the barriers was institutionalized racism. And so we can share you now the research data, we can share you in terms of what's real. And if you're not interested, you're interested in protecting institutionalized racism, I'm just gonna call you that and just say, you don't have to embrace change. You wanna keep things traditionally. And so we gotta be able to name the change that really needs to happen.
Oh man, name the change. That might be a next t-shirt coming to Sadie's called the Davis Tea, all right? Name the change. And so final question before we hit with a rapid fire called Time for 10. Now that PTECH is 13 years old, what are some of your hopes for the next decade?
My hope is that New York State and every state will do what Texas is doing. We brought the leadership in Dallas to Brooklyn. They had an opportunity to see the school. And now in the city of Dallas, every single high school has a PTECH school embedded in the school. And last spring, they had 1,000 graduates with a high school diploma and a community college degree, with 100 industry partners operating. And that is a solution that we could do in New York State. Absolutely, there's no barrier to be able to do that. We could break down that barrier. And when you think about the benefit to a state from doing that, a student with a post-secondary degree over their lifetime will earn $1 million more than somebody with a high school diploma. $1 million more. Think about the effect on tax revenue. Think about the effect on spending for the social safety net. Think about all of the return on your investment. If you invest in this model, you can solve what are the most difficult problems that we're facing across the United States. Over the last 2 years, enrollment for Black students in colleges went down 8%. Why did that happen? Because as a consequence of COVID, achievement levels went down and students are not graduating and they're not enrolling and they're not completing in college. And that is affecting the bottom line of states and localities. It's not just those students. It's every citizen is losing because we don't have more students who are college ready, completing college, career ready, and earning at higher levels. This is something that benefits everyone. So I don't think there's any barrier for doing what Texas is doing. Why would we let them do that? why would we not do that in every other state in the union? And I think the fact that we led and everybody around the world comes to PTECH schools to be able to learn what to do, this is our opportunity to do it ourselves.
The Associate in Applied Science degree is a modern high school diploma. I would love to be able to see the conversation move away from the PTECH being an opportunity for underserved populations. Because poor people want what the rich have. And no one wants to be poor. And so if you designate it only for that, then you're gonna have many people still shy away from it. I wanna see the specialized schools embrace PTECH. So that way more people then who are not a part of the specialized community will then see the value of it. You know, as long as you think that it's for other than, then it won't reach its full potential. So I definitely want to be able to see it grow into every type of school that exists.
Every type of school. And so step one, if you have not visited Crown Heights, Brooklyn, the only place to go there outside of Peppa's is to PTECH, to go visit and see it, because outside of just taking these beautiful goats' words for it, to see it and be in that environment, to see college classes right there in the heart of Crown Heights. I mean, I love to think of it as the educational manifestation of a rose garden from concrete. You have the projects right across the door. You have Mr. Davis in there rocking his yellow Adidas with his locks, and you have bursting genius in the walls of dynamic teaching with young people, again, pursuing college classes in that building. Right? Because so often they leave their neighborhood to go experience something better, but they're bringing that college and industry, like you said, right there to the Crown Heights. And so rapid fire time for 10, because I want to honor time for you to get up close and personal, get your selfie, get a signed copy of Breaking Barriers. I'm going to give you a question very much like James Lipton. First word that comes to mind. If nothing comes to mind, you can say pass, because we're not in school. And this is how I end every Behind the Bookstore. You ready? First one is not original. Shout out to James Lipton. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I would like to be a principal of a school.
Oh, a PTECH?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right. How about you, Mr. Davis?
A writer.
Okay. Would you rather read a book, listen to a book, write a book, or be read to?
I would rather read a book.
Read a book.
Listen to a book.
Listen to a book. Would you rather go back and meet your great-great-grandparents, or go forward in time and meet great-great-grandchildren?
I would like to meet my great-great-grandparents.
Go back.
I would like to go forward in time.
Forward in time. Do you have a favorite song lyric?
I don't.
Okay.
Too many.
Too many. All right. And again, all of these questions are inspired by things in this space, the vinyls, the heirlooms, etc. What's your earliest memory of learning Black history in school? Either a figure, a topic, or a grade?
In the 5th grade, I had an opportunity through my teacher to read more about the Civil War.
I don't know. I lived history. You know, all of my early teachers were Black, and my home, you know, was a bounce back and forth between the South and the North. So I literally lived history.
You can say a bad question. All right, we're gonna skip. So what rejuvenates you, right? So in this space, we're aspiring to rejuvenate, cultivate, or educate. What rejuvenates you while you are plowing through breaking barriers and doing this work?
It's the story of the individual PTECH scholars. And I'm fortunate to be in touch with, you know, dozens of them around the United States and around the world. And I love nothing better than to hear the stories of their lives, which were influenced by this program, whether they went to the school in Brooklyn or Newburgh or Australia or France or Ireland or Maryland. The PTECH is about the students, and staying in touch with them and seeing them now at a point where they can influence others. There's nothing more important than that in my life.
Data on how to beat the odds, that's what rejuvenates me. And every single day, there's some data that I'm sharing somehow.
And you know you're in the inner circle when you get the Davis email with the data spreadsheet. So work up to it. It's really a beautiful thing to read. Also follow him on LinkedIn for his great blogs. He talks about everything from Algebra 1 to staffing to empowering Black men and supporting them and mentoring them into leadership. But he can tell you about that himself. What do you hope PTECH cultivates for the community it serves?
I hope it cultivates the change that every student can succeed. That the assumption that based upon a student achievement level, their zip code, their economic condition, their family condition, making a judgment about what a student can do based upon those criteria makes no sense. And that's what PTECH blows away. And that's the story in the book. Don't make an assumption based upon these artificial assumptions about who can achieve, and anyone can.
Absolutely.
I hope PTECH allows more satellite colleges to appear in communities so people don't have to leave communities to go to college.
Mm-hmm. What's the last good piece of advice you received from an elder?
The last good piece of advice, I had a mentor who worked for President Truman and worked for Mayor Wagner, and he told me that I could do anything.
Respect and manners will carry me further than anything else.
Mm-hmm. Respect and manners. Who do you consider to be a literary goat? I'm stumping him. I'm just kidding.
I'll need more time.
More time, no problem.
Toni Morrison.
Toni Morrison. And shout out to the Morrison Mint Tea by Black and Bold.
Oh.
5% of the proceeds go towards HBCUs. We named it after her. We also have a sticker in her honor. All right, stay focused, Yaya. Finish this sentence and then we'll have one final question. There'll come a time when you have to, in doing this work, there'll come a time when you have to
Put away an assumption about what works, and be open to learning about new things.
Leave PTECH Brooklyn.
And lastly, although you wrote this great book filled with narratives that's in our hashtag Food for Educators genre, if you were writing your memoir, what might your dedication page say?
My dedication page would say is, I needed the help of so many others to achieve anything, and that I am indebted to all the people who have helped me and continue to help me.
Thank you, haters.
Exclamation point, exclamation point. What's a behind the bookstore without thereal.com? All right, so, I mean, I just love that you're both here, that you brought your diverse perspective and experiences, layers of humor, insights into how this model can grow, why its impact matters, and really, hopefully New York catches up to Texas's vibe of just putting a PTECH everywhere. I want to close with a quote from the afterword, Mr. Davis, if you don't mind. One of the things we hear so often, and teachers, I know I can get a witness on this, they talk about differentiation and rigor, right? And those are edubabble buzzwords. But one of the things I love in the afterword that Mr. Davis talks about in this model, I would rather you struggle through the rigor and the trying to get it and pass that college algebra course the second time you take it. But then you've got it, you've passed it. I said early on, fail early, fail often, but keep moving. That right there is a book in and of itself. And I tell my students, PTECH is the new 1%. How many Black males under 21 have a debt-free college degree and are working at a Fortune 100 company? If you ask me, every school should be a PTECH. And so if you ask me, I'm in agreement with very little power to make it happen, or a magic wand, but every school should be a PTECH. And so one of the things we say here in this space is that our grandmother's prayers are still protecting us, and that when we're in this space, we are rejuvenated and educated on something new. And so whether you have worked in the school model and know it, you are an alumnus of that program, or you never heard about it, but you said, I'm coming to Sadie's. We're very grateful that you're here to hear right out of the mouths of the founding brainchilds and creatives of this model. please support this book, and even if you don't buy it for yourself, gift it this holiday season, because unlike Nintendo or that bottle of wine, a book lasts a lifetime. And so it's a treasure, and if you get it autographed today, it can be an heirloom. So please, grab a copy, take a minute to come up and close and personal with the author, and thank you for our many behind the books.